You're listening to the Lively Science Podcast. On each episode, we're meeting a different scientist, find out what is it that they do and why do they do it. On this episode, we're meeting Maria Sporbert, plant ecologist. Maria, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Yola, thanks for inviting me to your podcast. And yeah, welcome to my home.
Well, thank you for having us, actually.
You're welcome.
So, Maria, let's start to get to know each other. As far as I know, you were born here in the city of Halle, Germany.
Exactly, yeah. I was born here in Halle. I went to school in Halle. After finishing school, I took now it's called gap year, right? So I went to Ireland for 1 year to also get an idea about what do I really want to do after school. So I've always been interested in biology already during school, but I wasn't sure whether I want to continue. I was sure that I want to go to university, but said, okay, let's do a little break and think about. And afterwards, I came back to my hometown and started studying here.
So you came back to your hometown, and since then you are based here.
Yeah, since then I was based here, exactly.
And you just became a plant ecologist.
I think 10 years ago I would never thought about becoming a plant ecologist. I remember the first year at university, my schedule was full of chemistry and physics and not that much about biology. And I think I failed half of my exams in chemistry and physics, and I said, okay, come on, you're too stupid for this university, maybe you should do something else. Yeah, I was really struggling at this first year, but it was my colleagues and friends at university who also, some of them were struggling as well, and we said, okay, come on, let's do it. It can't be that
The very same happened to me. I guess the first year challenge is hard for most of the students, regardless their career. We all fail the first year in the university. Okay, Maria, so you're a plant ecologist, and when people think, maybe, I mean, in people's minds, the idea of an ecologist is probably a person that runs around in the middle of the jungle, wears outdoor clothing 24/7, and gathers all kinds of samples, plant samples, animal samples. So do you fit with this description?
Yeah, partly I fit, but so today I fit with walking around in the garden and collecting plant material. But after finishing my studies in biology, I started a PhD, and this was, or still is, because I'm finishing it right now, this is totally a desk-based project. So I'm sitting in front of a computer every day. So don't go to the forest or anything else.
All right. So you've been working both as a field ecologist and also a desk ecologist. You mentioned that you were finishing your PhD. Can you tell us shortly about it?
I was working on it's macroecological project. So studying the distribution of species over, in my case, the whole European continent.
So you kind of like had your data already.
Exactly. So this was really, I was using secondary data. So using databases and matching them, combining data to answer the bigger questions. Did some teaching where I was like the leader for some excursions, which was quite nice. And this was in the forest, in national park.
This seems something like you really enjoy, right?
Definitely.
Yes, because you're in exchange with students, also constant exchange with your colleagues, as you mentioned before. But when it comes strictly about your research, I do really want to know, what do you measure? What is it that you what do we call data, and what does it mean, microecology or biogeography, which are basically your main research lines?
So at first, maybe this definition of macroecology, I mean, there's macro inside. So we are at a continental scale or global scale. So which is the scale where mainly climate is the driving factor of, in my case, species distribution, so plant species distribution.
And when you work at this continental level, one of your goals is to understand how species are distributed and why?
Exactly. So this is one question I was working with. So if you imagine that there might be a species which only occurs in mountain areas, like only in small places in the Alps, while there's another species which is distributed like nearly over the whole European continent. So this is the point where when I'm talking about plant species distribution. And of course, we only know it because there were people taking notes of it, like during the last 100, 200 years.
Yes.
So where does the species occur? In southern France or in somewhere Russia? So it's a lot of work that people have done in the past, written down in books, which has been digitized over years. And this data are available nowadays.
Right, so as you said, all this information is available. But what are the real implications of having this information? How can it help? And more importantly, what should we care about how species are distributed?
So I had the opportunity to work with a database that contains it was millions of vegetation plot information. It's the European Vegetation Archive Corp, so it's information from all over Europe, and it's a collection and it's available. So it's a really great database, and I combined those site information on local scale, so this precise information,
yes,
with this coarser information,
broader at the level of continents,
exactly. For me, it was like taking this local plots as you can say a point sample of your distribution range. So you have a specific information. Okay, it's the species is occurring there, we know, but how is it occurring in a specific part of its so-called its range, its distribution range? Is it common in a specific part of it? Is it less common in another?
Yeah.
So this was my main question. So
your approach is kind of allows us to understand what makes a species a common one or a rare one, right? And and if we don't know how biodiversity, in this case plants, are distributed in our surroundings and globally, if we don't know which kind of species are more likely to disappear, in this case, whether the rare ones or the common ones, then we are in trouble. And I guess this is the direction where you're heading to, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good summary of it.
Right. Maria, moving more into the direction of your current research, I found out that you are involved in a project focused on botanical gardens. Your project used them as a global observation network. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so the project I am working in is the so-called FANOBS project, and it stands for Phenological Observations in Botanical Gardens. And I am one of the scientific and public coordinators. So this FANOBS project was established in 2017 by 4 botanical gardens from Germany. So it was Berlin, Leipzig, Jena, and Halle. And it's the idea behind is to study the phenology of herbaceous species.
Phenology is kind of like the rhythm, the timing of a species, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the timing, when does the species start flowering, the duration of this phase, when does it end, and when does it start fruiting, when does it end, and when does it start like dying or losing its photosynthetic activity in autumn mostly.
So you pay attention to the particular date in which those events happened.
Exactly.
In herbaceous species. But why?
half of the plant species on Earth are herbaceous, so the other half is like also trees and shrubs. And so far during the last centuries, this study of phenology was mainly on trees.
So historically, scientists and people were more interested in trees, maybe because the changes in their life cycles, or appreciating this timing was kind of easier.
Exactly. Or if you think of this leaf coloring in North America during the Indian summer, so it's a big event, and so we are focusing on the smaller plants now.
But why is it interesting to know the timing of this species in botanical gardens? What does it tell us?
Yeah, as you already said, so botanical gardens, they have this collection of a large amount of plant species. They are distributed all over the world, botanical gardens. So in our network, we are currently 14 gardens, which are spread over the Northern Hemisphere. So it's not only in Germany, it's not only in Europe. We include, for example, Rome or Trondheim in Norway. But we also
How many botanical gardens?
At the moment, it's 14. And we also, for example, have from North America, so Boston is in the network, and Chicago, we have Beijing. So
wow, it's a huge network then.
It is huge, but it will grow further. At least that's the plan. So we want to include even more gardens to cover a broader climatic gradient, for example. So we have a species set with a large overlap between all those botanical gardens.
Okay, so you have the same species growing under different conditions all over the world.
All over the world in different locations in the botanical gardens.
And then what you see is the variation under timing, growing in different locations.
Exactly. So it's a fact that phenology is mainly driven by climate. So, and in terms of climate change, there are already studies that prove that climate change has an impact on the phenology of plants. And with our project, we want to prove that the climate has an important impact.
Altering this rhythm of the species.
Exactly. I mean, if you imagine that the flowers are important for pollinators. So if a species starts flowering earlier during the year, also ends earlier during the year, the pollinators that are depending on the species have to be adapted as well, if it's possible. Otherwise, this might be a huge problem for the pollinators because they depend on the species for nectar and resources.
Yes.
So,
and also, I guess for the plant itself, if I'm producing seeds earlier or later, then all the processes that come after, such as germination and establishment, will be also altered. So what is at stake here is not only the ecology of individual species, but also their interactions.
Exactly, it's the species is always part of a community. Of course, in botanical gardens we have this like monocultures often standing in a systematic order. But I mean, we just see these botanical gardens as a study point.
Yeah, it is all this complexity that you're trying to integrate using botanical gardens as a start. Maria, but another cool aspect that I want to emphasize on this project is that you bring together different groups of people, scientists, students, and citizens. And I was wondering, how do you make that? How do you make it possible?
Yeah, that's a point that I really like about the project, and also one thing that I was really keen to joining it. So this mixture of people coming together, because a project like this can't be done by just scientists in their offices. I mean, you need a team, you need a network. And especially in terms of botanical gardens, first you have to name the gardeners that are working there. So they are a big part of our network. Then, of course, you have the scientists that develop the study, but you have the technical assistants that are going to the botanical gardens each week, each Wednesday, people are monitoring all the stages following a standardized protocol. So everybody's answering the same question.
So in the future, we are looking forward that this weekly monitoring can be done or supported by citizen scientists.
It's just regular people doing scientific measurement work?
Yeah, for example, yeah, it's like the regular people. We have a lot of retired person interested in our projects. Many of them are visiting the botanical gardens anyway because they like the places. So and they support and help our project. So of course they help collecting data, but also we want them to take something out of the project.
Yes.
So take the idea, take the in our case, okay, the importance of biodiversity, for example, the importance of the collection of botanical gardens. And besides this, we also include a lot of students help us, but also students conducting their master's or bachelor thesis in our project. So they have some little side projects on their own. And in the end, this is part of this whole data collection that we have.
So as you said, the project is running and it's growing, but how long will it continue?
Let's see. So we have applied for a next funding phase. And we hope it will run for a longer time, because the longer period we have these measurements, the more interesting.
Definitely. Fingers crossed. It's such a great work, and it has to be supported. Cool. Yeah. Maria, thank you for such a nice interview, such a nice input.
Yeah, thanks, Yola. I really enjoyed it.
Me too, Maria. It has been a pleasure. Everybody, thank you for joining us. This has been the Lively Science Podcast with plant ecologist Maria Sporbert.